we're holding on 57B2, 57B2, right column. We're picking up where the Mishnah continued. Okay, the right column towards the bottom. The Mishnah said as follows: Iradam hapar l'soich dam asoy. After having dealt with each one of the bloods, that means the bull's blood and the goat's blood, individually, they then got mixed together, and then were sprayed towards the parochis, and as we're going to learn now, applied to the four corners of the inner mizbeach, the inner altar, the golden altar, which was a small 1 amma high altar on which they burnt the incense, the ketairis, and he applied it to the blood to the four corners. So here we go. Says the Gemara, Tanan, Kiman the Omer Ma'arvin the Koronos. Our Mishnah is being taught according to the Man the Yoma, according to the one that holds that we mix the bloods of the par, the dama par of the bull, and the dama soyer, the blood of the goat. We mix it. We mix the blood together in order to apply it to the karnei hamizbeach, the horns of the mizbeach, otherwise known as the four corners. The intma, Rabbi Yoshiv, Rabbi Yochanan. One of them says we mix the two bloods, the goat's blood and the bull's blood together, and then we apply it to the corners of the mizbeach. We do not. In fact, the blood of each animal is applied separately. First the bull's blood and then the goat's blood. Good. 57B3. Okay.
So,
yeah.
Do we have 1 second?
Yeah, sure we do. Go ahead.
So it was very interesting in the when it says the Itmar in the art scroll, it says the term Itmar, it has been stated, is generally reserved for the words of Amoraim. Here, however, it is used for Rabbi Yoshia and Rabbi Yonasan, who are Ritva explains that this is because this dispute was never formally incorporated into a brisa, but remained part of the oral tradition of the Amoraim. That's very interesting.
Yes, and what should be pointed out is what Starley just pointed out. Since I'll take the time to talk about this.
The only reason I brought it up is because, to me, as we go on and on and on, when we see the Itmar, to me now it means something more than it used to mean.
Right. It doesn't mean, and what really needs to be seen in an historical factor is that the Mishnah did not come to Rebbe HaKadosh in a vacuum. There were clearly written versions, various written versions along the way for 150 to 200 years prior to Rebbe HaKadosh bringing all of these different personal manuscripts and bringing them together and codifying it in the Mishnah. What Rebbe HaKadosh did is what then later on the Rambam, Maimonides, did in his great work, the Rambam, the Yad HaChazaka. He essentially took the Gemara and the Rif and began to classify it and categorize it into the structure, which was then turned around 300 years later and turned into the Shulchan Aruch. So, in the 1500s. So what Charlie is pointing out is that Itmar is normally the time of after the Mishnah, the Amaroyim, the time of after the Mishnah. Usually it says Tanya, the Tanya to refer to from Rebbe HaKodesh and before the Mishnah and before. Here is a case where it did not, so that it was sort of up in the air. It wasn't a traditional written on the side. It was more like an oral discussion that was discussed, so that it wasn't fast vastly established as a Tanoim. But you are right, Charlie, with the words that are used, we're getting an historical background as to period of time and what was taking place. Thank you for bringing it up. So once again, the Gemara said like this. So now the Gemara is like this. It's logical to say that Rabbi Oishi is the one who says we mix the bloods and then apply it to the Mizbeach. Because he said, even though the pasuk actually does not say the words. The pasuk does not say the words yacht. The pasuk actually says as follows: V'lokach midam hapar, and he shall take from the blood of the bull, umidam hasoy, and from the blood of the goat, v'nosan, and put and place it al kanis hamizbeach sovit, and place it on the corners of the altar of the mizbeach all around. By saying the words, he shall take the blood of the bull, v'lokach midam hapar, umidam hasoy, and from the blood of the he-goat. How do you translate the word and? So he's saying like this, even though the word together is not used in the pasuk, it says, you shall apply the blood of the bull and the blood of the soyer, which might mean this after this, the bull and then the soyer. He says, no, command the kosim yachtav domi. The Torah it's actually meant to be read as if together, that it's all one. In other words, apply both of them together as one, intermingled. So it's mashma that Rabbi Yonason holds the word and does not mean together, but it means zeh achazeh, this one and then that one. So it would mean sense that it is Rabbi Oishia that holds that we commingle the bloods, and it's Rabbi Yonason that seems to be saying that we do not. Says the Gemara, it's no proof. Afilu Tamer Rabbi Yonason. You could say our Mishnah is Rabbi Yonason. Shani hocha diksiv achas, because in our pasuk it says, and Aaron shall perform the atonement upon the horns once a year. Once a year. The pasuk is v'chipa Aaron al karnoisav, and Aaron shall perform the atonement, the chiper on the corners. Achas b'shana, once a year. Midam chatas hakipurim, from the blood of the sin offering of the atonement, kipur hakipurim, which is a plural language, an inclusive language, not singular, but plural, not chatas hakipurim, the chatas of your atonements. Since you see from over here, but since it says achas, one, so which of Yonason would say there's only one act of a blood atonement? Since it says kippurim, it means you need both the bull's blood and the goat's blood. But nonetheless, achas b'shana, once a year, not two applications, one application. So even Rav Yonason would agree that on Yom Kippur you mix the blood and you apply it to the Mizbeach. You apply it to the Mizbeach as a commingled blood offering. Zag the Gemara, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa. Now here, by the way, since Charlie brought it up before, we have the Lashon Tanya, right? Which is, of course, the time of the Tanoim. Tanya, the Brisa taught the Deloy Kishinuyan. But in fact, the Brisa taught, contrary to what we just answered, that even Rabbi Yonason agrees that we mix the blood. Because he said this Brisa learns as follows. Right? The pasuk says you shall take from the dam hapar and the dam hasoyer. The whole pasuk is v'lokach midam hapar midam hasoyer, and Aaron shall take from the blood of the par and the blood of the goat. V'nosan al kanis hamizbeach sovit, and put on the corners of the horns of the mizbeach all the way around. So the pasuk says v'lokach midam hapar midam hasoyer. Shuhu ma'arvin, this means that they are commingled together. The bloods are commingled together and then applied to the horns of the Mizbeach. Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. Those are the words of Rabbi Yoshia. We're now on today's daf. 58A1. Nun Ches Amid Aleph. Rabbi Yonason Omer, Rabbi Yonason says, Mizeh b'pnei Yatzah u'mizeh b'pnei Yatzvai. That no, what it means, those words, Milokach midam apar u'midam asoyer, they mean each one individual. First you apply the blood of the bull, and then you apply the blood of the goat. Amalai Rabbi Ishia says Rabbi Ishia Baloi Kvar Neman Achas, but the pasuk already said it should be done once a year. Achas B'Shana, right? It said the Achas B'Shana once a year. So what are you, Rabbi Yonason, going to do when you say we're doing two applications when the pasuk seems to be saying one application? Amalai Rabbi Yonason Baloi Kvar Neman, but the pasuk also says Midam Hapar Umidam Hasoyer. But doesn't the pasuk already say from the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat, meaning that each one is separate? Imke lama nema achas. So why does it say only once? It should be done once a year. Loi melecha, to teach you. Achas v'lo shtayim mitam hapar. Achas v'lo shtayim mitam hasoyer. That there's only one application, not two, from the blood of the bull onto the Mizbeach, and there's only one application of blood and not two from the blood of the goat onto the Mizbeach. So inquiring minds want to know, why would you even think otherwise? Why would you think that there would be two applications of each blood? But the answer, guys, is very simple. Because normally the rest of the year, how many times did you spray the blood? Once. Today on Yom Kippur, you spray it twice. Once in the Holy of Holies, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and once Michutz in the Heichal towards the Paraichas. So I would say, just like I spray the blood on Yom Kippur twice, maybe the applications that I got to put on the altar has to be done twice. Twice the blood of the bull should be applied twice, and then the blood of the goat should be applied twice. Kamash Malon, that no. While the spraying is done twice, application is only achas, once. But nonetheless, separately. First the blood of the bull, and then the blood of the goat. Says the Gemara, another brayso. Tani Ida, we learned another brayso. V'lokach midam hapar u'midam hasoy. And you should take from the blood of the bull and the blood of the eagle. Shuhum arbim zeh b'zeh. This Madhyama says, this teaches us that when they're being applied to the corners, to the horns of the Mizbeach, it should be commingled. You're saying that it should be mixed together. Maybe the Torah actually means one after the other. First the blood of the bull and then the blood of the goat. Talmud loima achas. The Torah then comes to teach us achas. One, that you apply only one application is made of the blood. That means the blood must be mixed together. The Stammet Rabbi and this Baraisa therefore seems to be going like the opinion of Rabbi Shia, who said exactly this. The bloods are mixed together, and it's one application of a mixed blood around the corners of the Mizbeach. Says the Gemara keeps going. It brings the final sentence in the Mishnah that we had before. If you remember, we then how did you mix it? You lifted one up, you poured it into an empty one, you poured it into this, you poured it into that, and you really had it very well mixed. So the Gemara goes like this. Rami Bacham asked the question of Rav Chisda. What happens? If a kohen places a bowl inside another bowl, the kibul sadam, and then he receives the blood inside. He's makabel the blood from the animal that was just slaughtered. Mahu. What's the din? So what do you have? Picture you have a cup within a cup. So that the bottom cup that you're holding in your hand is not actually the cup that's holding the liquid, right? If let's say you have a coffee in the morning from a styrofoam cup. So sometimes you put one cup into the other. Obviously, the inner cup is holding the coffee. The outer cup is what you're holding in your hand in order to make sure you don't get burnt or it doesn't spill. So here's the question. Mahu, do we say min b'minoi chaytzitz, that's things that are alike, two styrofoam cups, or in this case, two clay ashares, two sanctified vessels, do interpose one with the other, and that's a problem because the clay asharis has to be laying. Remember, we said the kohen has to be mekabel. The kohen has to receive the blood, which means that with his hands, he has to receive the blood within a clay asharis, within a sacred vessel. That's fine if it's only one vessel, because that's the normal way of things. You hold a vessel in your hand, and with that vessel that you're holding, you receive the blood. But if you double up the vessel so that the vessel that's actually accepting the blood is not the vessel that's actually laying in your hand, it's laying in another bowl, which is laying on your hand. Therefore, there is a chatzitza, an interposition, an interposing, right? A chatzitza between your hand and the keli that's actually holding the blood, and therefore that is no good. It's invalid. Or in fact, since this is a bowl and that's a bowl, okay, since both are bowls, it in essence is one idea, and if it's one idea, it's not a chatzitza, and the Kabbalah was good, and it's a valid Kabbalah. Amalei, he answered him, Tinisu, we learned in the Mishnah. No, Senet Amalei, Virikon in our Mishnah, it says he puts the full bowl into the empty bowl. My love, Heishiv Mizrak, Molelis Tzad Mizrak Reikon, that he places the full receiving bowl inside the empty receiving bowl. So, in other words, the blood that is now been mixed together into the other one is in a second bowl that has been placed into the empty first bowl. So, what do you see? That like to like, a bowl with a bowl, is not a chatzitza, because if the Kohen Gadol then picks it up, right? The actual bowl that's holding the blood is not in his hands. It's within the other bowl that is now holding that bowl, and that bowl is in the hands of the Kohen Gadol. Nonetheless, the avodah is good. So what do we see? That like to like things, a bowl with a bowl, do not make chatzitz, do not interpose. 58A2. 58A2 says the Gemara law. No, that is that we do not put the bowl that's now containing the blood within the empty bowl that you just emptied out. Ira mizrak malay l'sayt mizrak reika. It means that he pours the contents of the full bowl into the empty bowl. But it doesn't mean that we then combine the bowls, because there's no reason for it, and it might very well be an interposition. Says the Gemara, but the beginning of the Mishnah already taught us, he pours the blood of the bull into the blood of the goat. Since the bloods are already mixed together in a single bowl, what was the purpose of bringing another bowl? After the Gemara, in order to go ahead and mix the bloods very well. So in other words, picture us making a coffee on Shabbos, where the minig is to make a clay sheni. You fill up the water in one cup, then you pour it into another cup, so on and so forth. But most of the time we do it even a few more times, because you might as well take away the heat, the heat, the hotness from the water. Same thing over here. You mix it up very, very well this way. Says the Gemara, so you have no proof one way or another. Whether a like-to-like bowls put together do interpose, make a chatzitza or not. Says the Gemara, okay, I'll ask you something else. Here we go. Toshma, al gabe kli. If a kohen was standing on top of a utensil, oy al gabe regel chaveroi, or on top of his another kohen's foot while doing the avodah, so that his feet were not touching the ground of the Beis Hamikdash, puzzle the avodah is invalid. We say that something of a similar kind when his foot is resting on the foot of another kohen at the time when he was doing the avodah is invalid. So you see that like to like, one foot to another foot does interpose, is a chatzitza between the feet and the floor, and so therefore you see that like to like does create a chatzitza. Says the Gemara, no, that's not a proof. Shani regel, the foot of another kohen is different. Because he cannot consign his foot to the first kohen. Because obviously, if kohen Aleph steps on kohen Beis while he's doing the avodah, kohen Beis is going to pull his foot away. So therefore, it's not, as it were, one unit. It's not one unit, so therefore it's a chatzitza. Mashenk and the two bowls, that's not a problem. So maybe they wouldn't be a chatzitza, they wouldn't be an interposition. Says the Gemara, there are those who say that he acted a Rav Chisda derech sheirus bekach. Is it proper to do the avodah by accepting the blood in a bowl within a bowl? This is not proper and it's invalid. Toshma, he said, come here and we'll see what they said in yeshiva. The Ton of the Bay Rabbi Yishmael, because it was a brayso that was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael, Eskol Klei Hashore, Asher Yishvasu Ba B'Kodesh, and they shall take all the sacred vessels that we use for the service in the Kodesh, in the holy place. Shnei Kelim B'Shira Achas. The pasuk is talking about two vessels and one service. That two vessels are allowed to be used for a single service, because the pasuk says, "As kol and all kalei hashoret," in the plural. In the plural, be used asher yishu ba b'kodesh, should be used for the service in the singular. From there, it's mashma. You could take two bowls and use it for one service, which means a bowl placed within another bowl is considered proper and does not interpose, is not a chatzitza. Since we're on the backs of asking questions, let's ask a bunch more. Rami Bar Chama Rav Chisda. Rami Bar Chama inquired of Rav Chisda, if a kohen place best, like a little shine, a little syrup, inside the bowl that's receiving the blood, the kibul bayas adam, and he received the blood in it, mahu. What's the halacha? Min she'ena minoi, and it's chaytzitz. Do we say that it's something and something different, and therefore it interposes? This question would be if there's a glass glaze on a bowl. Does the glass glaze interpose? It's not part of the bowl. It's something different than the bowl. It's very similar to this question. Or it does not interpose. And let me tell you something. This is a real question, because how do you title it then? We all know if you get a new keli, you get a new vessel, you're supposed to title it in the mikvah. Good. How do you do it if it has a glaze? So you should know that the Mefarshim, especially in the last 50 years, have been very busy with that question. Is the glaze part and parcel of the bowl, or in fact it's a separate different thing? When we were younger and the glaze was not as well applied as it is today, the question was even greater, because the glaze sometimes came off the bowls, which then said it was certainly an interposition, and how could you title it? Today the question is really not there, because today the glazes are so part and parcel, essentially lays it into the bowls. It's no longer really a question. But nonetheless, Here you see where the similar question is being applied. Min sheina minoi chaitzis. Do we say that it's an interposition because it's alike with an unlike, a bowl and the bast? It does not interpose. It says like this: since the bast is porous, this should sound very familiar. Again, since it's porous, it does not interpose because the water flows through it. Whatever you put in it, the dam flows through it. Or perhaps there's no difference. At the end of the day, it's two different things, and it should be a chatzitz, and you can't use it. We're on 58.8.3. We're getting to the bottom of the Yoma now. Says the Gemara, Amalei, Rav Chisda said, no. Tanina, we learned with regard to the paraduma and the purification waters, the meichatos, the atoning water that is of the red heifer, that is mitar tameim, that through that cleans up, purifies the contaminated of a tumas meis. It says like this: Zoila v'hoilech ad shemagia l'svoi. If there's a sponge in the vessel to which the waters are being prepared, he should draw off the water in the vessel and continue until he reaches the sponge and then stop, because the water in the sponge is already no good. Now, this Mishnah invalidates only the water that's in the sponge, but not the rest of the water that's in the keli. Well, see from here that the sponge is not considered a chatzitza, an interposition between the water and the vessel. It was lying on the bottom. It was lying on the bottom of the vessel. Nonetheless, it's not considered a chatzitza. Why? Because it's porous. Same thing over here. The bass, which is also that glaze, which is also porous, should not be considered an interposition between the blood and the bowl. Gemara says no. Shani Maya de Kalishi. Water is different. You don't just look at the bowl itself. You have to look at the contents of which it contains to figure out whether it's a chatzitza. Water is thin, so it flows easily through the sponge. So we say, since the sponge is porous, and the water that's being put into the keli is also porous, is also thin, it flows easily through. Blood is thicker, as we know, blood is thicker than water. Blood is thicker and does not flow so easily. So therefore, it's possible that the bass, even though it's porous, will still be considered an imposition. So now we've taken an extra step forward. We don't just look at the actual interposition variables, i.e. the glaze or the bass and the actual utensil. We have to take in a secondary variation. What is the vessel going to be used for in determining the possibility of an interposition? Zokti Gemara. Ikediamri hachi pashatli. Others say Rabbi Bachama answered up like this: B'dam kosher. With regard to blood, just the opposite. It is valid. The bass placed inside is not an interposition, but the kaimitz puzzle, with regard to the kaimitz, which is the grain of the mincha, which is put into a klei ashares, into a sacred vessel, that is invalid. Because the kaimitz is grains, it's thicker. It's thicker in its composition. And therefore, that is clearly a chatita, but dam, even though it's thicker than water, still is enough to flow through, and it's not such a problem. Very good. We are now on Nun Ches Amid Bey, 58b1. And we have about 10 minutes, so we'll work our way down the Amid. At least let's get through the Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah says like this. Now, we finish spraying the blood to the curtains. One, first in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Holy of Holies. And now on Yom Kippur, he sprays the blood on the inside in the heichal toward the curtain of the Kodesh HaKadosh from the outside. So now he says like this. Let's get an explanation of what's going on here. The pasuk says he should go out. It's an interesting lashon. He should go out. V'yotza. He shall go out to the mizbeach, the altar that is before Hashem, otherwise known as the mizbeach hapenimi, the gold 1 amma high mizbeach that was used to burn, to offer up the ketairis, the incense. Zem mizbeach hazah. That's the golden mizbeach, otherwise known as the mizbeach hapenimi, that's inside the heichal. Hischel mechate v'yored. The Kohen Gadol begins to apply the mixed blood of the bull and the goat downwards on each of the corners. Okay, downward each corner. Where does he begin? He begins as follows: Mikeren Mizrachis Saphinus, in the northeast corner. Then he moves around. Saphinus Marobis to the northwest. Marobis Deroimis the southwest. Deroimis Mizrachis, the southeast is where he finishes. So he finishes in Florida, in essence. He's finishing in Florida. He starts in New York, goes over to Washington State, works his way down to San Diego, and then comes across to Florida. At the place that he would normally start right in the rest of the year to apply the blood of a regular chatas on the outside altar. That's the mizbeach, the chayshes, the copper mizbeach, the big one that was 10 amas high with the ramp. That one, Misham Goyma mizbeach at Panimi on Yom Kippur. That's where he would finish the applications on Yom Kippur on the inner altar. In other words, he finished in the southeast, in the Florida section of the Mizbeach HaPanimi, and in the other, that usually was the starting point. As we discussed earlier in this Masechta, that was the starting point of the applications of the dam regularly, of the chatas dam that was applied to the Mizbeach HaChitza, to the outside Mizbeach. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, that's the Tanakam. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says no. In fact, the Kohen Gadol stood in one place while he applied the blood to all four corners. Because the inside Mizbeach was very short, it was 1 amma high, it was easy to reach around, obviously. Okay? That means it was about 18 inches high. Okay? Now, on all the corners, he applied the blood in an upward stroke, like this. Not as a spray, by the way. He actually applied it. He has to apply it directly with his finger. So he took his finger and he went upwards. And if you think about it, when you're leaning over, just lean over wherever you guys are. Lean your hand over like the end of your desk and try to apply something. By definition, you're going to apply from down to up, because that's the only way to apply. Make believe like you had blood on your hand. Now you want to apply it to the corner all the way on the other end of your desk. There's only one way to do it. You bring your finger upwards. All right? Except for the corner that was directly in front of him. Look at the corner that's in front of you, literally right in front of you. Right? How would you apply it? You would obviously apply it in a downward stroke from top to bottom. And if you think about it, that's what Rabbi Eliezer is saying. That's pretty obvious. If Rabbi Eliezer is arguing with the Tanakhama and says he doesn't move around the 1 amma mizbeach, he stands in one place and he leans over to do it. On 3 of the corners he has to lean over. He's going to do it from bottom to top. The one right in front of him, he does it from top to bottom. The Mishnah goes further. He's alta haray al mizbeach sheva piyamim. He then sprinkles the purity of the altar 7 times. What is the purity of the mizbeach tahara shel mizbeach? That's the top, not the sides, the actual top of the mizbeach, where normally you offered up the Keteris, the incense. There he would sprinkle as opposed to apply. He would sprinkle the blood 7 times. Ushiyare Adam, and the remaining of the blood, he would then pour on the western base of the outside, the Mizbeach HaNechayshis, the outside in the Ezra, in the Azara, in the courtyard, on the outside altar. But as for the sacrifices, the regular daily sacrifices that were done on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, on the outside altar, he would pour the remainder of their blood upon the south side of the altar. But Elu ve'elu, they and those, whether the ones poured in the west side, western part of the base, or the southern side of the base, Ba'arv and Ba'ama would mix together in the canal that was underneath, that was flowing out, which flowed out into the Nachal Kidron, the Kidron Valley, which today they have discovered again, this valley and this stream. So if you go to Eretz Yisrael, you can actually go see it if everything is quiet. And then they would sell it to gardeners as fertilizer. But one is moil, one would be over on using it inappropriately for unauthorized use. In other words, they sold it to the gardeners, and they redeemed the holiness onto the money received, and the money received had to be used inside the Beis Hamikdash for nedavos, for donative offerings, etc. Says the Gemara. So the Gemara said, right, that in Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol first sprinkles blood towards the curtain, then places blood on each of the 4 corners of the Mizbeach HaPanimi, the Mizbeach on which the Keteris was burnt. Other offerings, in other words, let's say the Kohen Gadol's bull chatas for any Aveira, we're on 58b2. That means any bull offering, let's say the Kohen Gadol during the year made a mistake, and now he had to bring an atonement, right? So like we said, the same procedure would follow. Blood was sprinkled to the corner and the corners of the Mizbeach HaPanim. The Brisa then discussed there is a difference. Tanu Rabbanan, Vayetze El Mizbeach. The Kohen Gadol should go out to the Mizbeach before Hashem. That's before Hashem, and in effect kaparon. My Talmud Loimer. What is it teaching? What's this word Vayetze? And he shall go out. The Kohen shall go out. Kohen Gadol should go out. Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman, since we see with regard to the bull that's brought for any commandment that the Kohen Gadol's bull chatas, where in case he made a mistake inadvertently, that at the moment that he sprinkles towards the curtain, the Kohen stands past the Mizbeach and sprinkles the blood towards the curtain. That he stands between the Mizbeach and the curtain. And I might have thought that the sprinkling towards the curtain on Yom Kippur is done the same way. Talmud Levi that Yom Kippur is different. Vayotza el Mizbeach. He shall go out to the Mizbeach. What does that mean? Heichin haya. Where was he that we're saying he goes out? We say that he was lifnim min ha-Mizbeach. He was standing inwards from the Mizbeach. So in other words, we're saying before he was standing between the Mizbeach and the curtain. Now he moves back. He moves back behind the Mizbeach. Let's go one more to the 2 dots. Here we go. Tanya Idach, we learned another brisa. Lifnei Hashem. Right? This is regarding the Kohen Gadol's chatas. When he makes a mistake, he has to bring a chatas. It says that he has to be before Hashem. Since we see by the bull and the goat of Yom Kippurim, that he stands inwards from the base, from the Mizbeach, and sprinkles the blood towards the curtain. I might have thought the Kohen Gadol's bull chatas for any aver that he did would be the same. Talmud Loima Mizbeach Keteris Hasam Lifnei Hashem. Asher ba'oil moyed. Mizbeach l'fnei Hashem. Ve'ein koyin l'fnei Hashem. The Mizbeach is before Hashem, but not the koyin before Hashem. Okay, tzad. Oimed chutz l'Mizbeach umazeh. Means he stands behind the altar and then he sprinkles. So in other words, we have one brisa that says that's the way he did it on Yom Kippur. He stood behind the Mizbeach and sprinkled, and the rest of the year he stood in front of the Mizbeach and sprinkled. And the other brisa says just the opposite. The rest of the year he stood in front of the Mizbeach, and he stood behind the Mizbeach, and on Yom Kippur he stood in front of the Mizbeach. Very good, everybody. This is